All right, let's jump right in. When you think geography, your mind probably goes straight to maps, maybe mountains and rivers, but that's just scratching the surface. It's really the story of us, how we live, what we believe, and the marks we leave on the world. Today, we're going to explore the incredible field of cultural geography. And to get us started, I've got a question. Just look at the smartphone that's probably in your hand or, sitting right next to you. What if I told you that single object, that little rectangle of glass and metal, holds the keys to understanding how human culture actually works and spreads across the entire planet? Pretty wild, right? Well, let me show you how. Okay, so first things first, we have to break culture down into its most basic parts. And believe it or not, we can see all three of its main components right there in your phone. So here's how geographers look at it. First, you've got the artifact. That's the physical thing itself, the actual phone. Simple enough. Then you have the sociofact. These are the unwritten social rules that surround the object. Like the shared idea that it's rude to be scrolling through your phone at the dinner table. And finally, there's the mentafact. These are the big abstract ideas it represents. Things like global connection or maybe even social status. Each one of these, the object, the rule, the idea, is what we call a culture trait. Honestly, the best way to think about these culture traits is to picture them as Lego bricks. Yeah, Legos. A single brick isn't all that impressive on its own, but it's the absolute smallest, most essential piece you need to start building something way, way bigger. And this is how those bricks start snapping together. You take individual traits, like the phone itself and the rules for using it, and they combine to form something called a culture complex. A great example is the whole concept of smartphone etiquette. Then, that entire complex fits into an even bigger culture system, like our whole global network of digital communication. See how that works? We went from one tiny brick to this massive worldwide structure. Okay, so we've got the what figured out. We know what culture's made of. But, geographers are obsessed with the where. I mean, how do you even begin to put something as messy and fluid as culture onto a map? Let's take a look. So they have a few different ways of doing this. The first is a formal region, and it's probably what you'd expect. It's an area where people share a specific common trait, like everyone speaking the same language. But then you have a functional region, which is totally different. It's an area that's organized around a central hub or a specific function. A perfect modern example is a cell phone network's coverage map. It doesn't matter what language you speak. What matters is if you're connected to the same cell towers. And then we get to my favorite, the vernacular region. This is a place that isn't defined by any official borders on a map. It exists simply because we all agree it does. It lives in our collective minds. Think about Silicon Valley. It's not a city, it's not a state, but we all know what it is and where it is, right? It's a region that's defined purely by perception and reputation. So cool. Now, a key thing to remember is that culture never, ever sits still. It's always on the move, changing and spreading across the world. So, how does an idea that starts in one tiny spot end up on the complete opposite side of the globe? Well, every single idea, every new technology, it has to start somewhere. That birthplace is called a cultural hearth. You can think of these as the world's innovation hubs, the sources from which new art, new beliefs, and new ways of doing things begin to radiate outwards. And that outward spreading process, that's called cultural diffusion. So here's the key difference. The cultural hearth tells you where an idea came from. Cultural diffusion explains how it got everywhere else. It's the story of an idea's journey, carried on the backs of migration, trade, and today, of course, instantaneous communication. This all leads us to one of the biggest, most classic debates in all of geography. What has a bigger impact on a culture? Is it the physical environment we live in, or is it the choices we humans make? It's basically nature versus nurture, but on a massive global scale. And our thinking on this has changed a lot. Way back, the popular idea was environmental determinism. This theory basically said the environment calls all the shots. So people in the mountains were just destined to be isolated and backward because the terrain was tough. But then a new idea came along called possibilism. This was a bit more optimistic. It said, no, the environment just offers a bunch of options and people have the freedom to choose. That evolved into environmental perception, which took it a step further, saying our choices are really shaped by how we see our environment. And that brings us to the modern view, which sees humans as modifiers, recognizing that we don't just choose from options, we have the power to completely transform our environments. Okay, so let's tie all of this together. We've talked about traits, regions, how ideas travel, and our relationship with nature. How can you actually see all this stuff in your day-to-day life? The answer is all around you. It's in what geographers call the cultural landscape. Seriously, just look outside. The style of the buildings, the way the streets are laid out, the parks, the signs, every single piece of it is a visible trace and imprint left by the people who live there. It is literally the story of a culture written onto the land itself. This quote really just says it all perfectly. The world you walk through every day isn't just a random collection of stuff. It's an imprint, a physical record of your culture's history, its values, its technology. What that really means is you're living inside a history book, and cultural geography just gave you the tools to read the pages. So the next time you walk out your front door, I want you to try something. Look around, but with these new eyes. Don't just see a boring old building or a street. Ask yourself, what's the artifact here? What are the sociofacts, the unwritten rules? How did this idea get here? And the biggest question of all, what story is your landscape telling you?